Welcome back to Morning Trade Live. It's now time for the big picture. Let's welcome in Mike Townsend, Managing Director, Legislative and Regulatory Affairs over at Charles Schwab. Very good morning to you, Mike. What's your assessment of day 23 of this government shutdown?
Well, good morning, Sam. Great to be with you. Yeah, we're not seeing much movement on Capitol Hill. As you said, day 23 here, little sign, I think, that it's going to end anytime soon. The House of Representatives voted back in mid-September, more than a month ago, on a plan that would allow for funding to continue until November 21st. The Senate has voted on that now 12 times, including yesterday, and has not gotten close to what they need to be. The best vote they've had is 55 votes in favor, and you need 60 in order to get that supermajority to pass that. Since that House vote back on September 19th, they haven't even been in session. They have been out of Washington this entire time, kind of watching the Senate stuck in this loop of, voting every couple of days on the proposal. The vote doesn't change and nothing seems to really move. And I think the other factor now is, of course, the president is heading out for his Asia trip. And I'm not sure that anything really gets resolved without the president's really direct involvement. Hard to imagine that how involved he's going to be during that important Asia trip. So I think we're in for several more days, probably towards the end of the month, before we get any real movement.
Yeah, it's interesting because Kevin Hassett seemed to signal at the start of the week, which sort of got people quite excited that this could be wrapping up sometime this week. So far, we're not seeing any of that. And as you mentioned, I mean, Trump has a lot of sort of foreign fish to fry right now with obviously his meetings in Asia, President Xi Jinping, obviously what he's doing with respect to sanctions on Russia as well. So, I mean, there seems to be a lot going on beyond these borders. But I'm just wondering, as far as the sticking points here, I mean, what could be the pressure point that is really the make or break here?
Yeah, I don't think we have any huge pressure points coming up until the end of the month. We're really keeping an eye on sort of that November 1st period as a potential catalyst for change. You've got the next payday for military personnel scheduled on October 31st. On November 1st, money runs out for SNAP, which is the food stamps program. That's an important one. Money for Head Start for childcare is getting very, very low. Should also hit that kind of breaking point as we turn the calendar to November. And then the other thing is November 1st is the start of the open enrollment period for the Affordable Care Act. And that's a huge issue on Capitol Hill because Democrats want to extend the enhanced subsidies that are in place for purchasing health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. Those expire at the end of the year. They want any agreement to reopen the government to include an extension of those expiring subsidies. Republicans, some of whom are very willing to talk about that issue, they maybe want to make modifications, but they're open to that. But they want to separate that from the government shutdown. That's really where the stalemate has been. And we'll see when November 1st that open enrollment starts, whether that's maybe a catalyst as people are going to go to enroll and see their premiums are up pretty significantly because of the expiration of those subsidies. So I think there are some pressure points coming up, but I don't think they're really there until the end of the month and the beginning of November.
What about that big Fed meeting next week? I mean, how do you anticipate they're going to communicate how they're thinking about this with the sort of lack of visibility on this front as to, how it's really going to affect the economy?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a fascinating meeting, more for what comes out afterwards, from what their discussions are, and of course from what Jerome Powell says at his news conference. I think everybody is expecting a 25 basis point cut. I don't have any sense that isn't what's going to happen. But I think the issue really is how is the Fed looking at the economy with this lack of data? I mean, we haven't had the September jobs report. We haven't had initial jobless claims weekly, that weekly report. We don't have information on housing starts, manufacturing, retail sales. All these data points that normally feed into Fed decisions that give a real read on the economy. I just don't know how they're going to sort of react to that. Now, Powell said last week that they feel like they have enough data through public and private sources for this October meeting, but he did say that kind of beyond that, they're going to really start to feel that lack of data. And as you discussed earlier, of course, the CPI data is scheduled to come out tomorrow. That at least is one data point that they'll have. But it's going to be, I think, really interesting to see how Powell talks about this, how they're looking at the economy, and how they're able to assess what's going on in the economy without some of this data.
Yeah, you wonder what sort of crystal ball they have. Always a pleasure, Mike Townsend. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your insights. That is the Managing Director, Legislative Regulatory Affairs over at Charles Schwab.